Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening in probably many areas that are listening to this. This is Doug Jury, your host today, and we're going to wait just another minute or two while some people settle in. It's about 2 minutes before the hour, so thank you so much for joining, and we'll be right back with you. Thank you. All right, folks, here we are. We find ourselves at the top of the hour. We're going to give just another minute or two while people trickle in. I know everybody likes to be just a few minutes late. They're probably getting off of other calls, grabbing a bite to eat or whatever. Interesting that I think we have 6 different countries involved today. So that's really quite a milestone here for a session here in the US. I know that I'm coming to you probably a lot of morning hours for some folks, maybe afternoon, and some people are just looking forward to their evening here coming up soon. So we're going to wait just a few more minutes as people start to trickle in, and then we're going to go ahead and kick off this bulletproof backup session. You're going to really, I think you're going to be very interested in this. We got some use cases. We got some ways of solving some of these really tough problems. So I'm going to come back to you in about 1 or 2 minutes after the hour. So sit tight, grab another cup of coffee, and I'll be right back with you. Thank you. See people continue to trickle in. So I'll go ahead and let that continue to occur. Again, this is Doug Jury, your host from Zadara, and thank you so much for everybody joining today. I still see the attendee list bubble up, so I appreciate all the folks that spent an hour with us or will spend an hour with us today. All right, let's go ahead and get started in the interest of everybody showing up on time. I appreciate that so much. So what we're going to do today is we're going to have some fun today and talk about bulletproof backups, some little bit of marketing information, a little bit of technology information, a little bit of housekeeping here for you. If you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type in that question, and I'd be happy to either answer it real time, or we can save it for the end, or maybe even during that session as well. So feel free to do that. This session will be, the deck will be sent out to you by request. Actually, I think as part of the thank you, you'll see a URL for the deck. And then also we're recording this session, so you'll be able to do that. So really, the best way to experience something like this is to kind of sit back, listen to the story, listen to the conversation. You don't have to worry about taking too many copious notes and so forth. So on the next slide, you're going to see the folks that are going to be on the session today. Steve Firms from Veeam, always a fan favorite. I love working with Steven. We've been working with him for several years now. Bill Kirshner, managing partner at Infolock. He's your host today, or I'm the host today, but he's basically your sponsor, and he basically has put a lot of this together. And then Howard Young on the far right, he's a director of solution architecture. He's been with Zadara just about as long as I have. I've been here for going on 9 years. So that's gonna basically, him and I have been partners for quite a while. So on the next slide, let's talk a little bit about the agenda. Bill's going to get up and talk about Infolock and kind of introduce Infolock to the folks here. And then we're going to do a little bit of Veeam and Zadara, some upfront information. And then we're going to kind of dive into it and talk about backup and ransomware, some of the solutions. Now, if I was in an audience right now, I'd ask, anybody know what the zip code 32110 is? That is a Veeam, sort of a Veeam concept. And I'm not going to steal anybody's thunder, especially Steven's, but we're going to talk about that. Now, oh, by the way, for anybody out there that's going to Google it, 32110 is actually a small city in Florida, but that's not what it was all about. This is all about how to protect your data and so forth. We're going to then have some examples and use cases, and Howard's going to get up and sort of practically show you 4 different, in all good practices, show you 4 different examples. Then we're going to go ahead and have kind of a call to action Q&A session and things like that. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Bill. So Bill, you can introduce yourself and introduce your company, Infolock. Thank you.
Thanks, Doug. I'm Bill Kirchner from Managing Partner at Infolock, and we're a data management service provider in the Midwest who partners with Zadara and Veeam. We're a subsidiary of Network Dynamics for any of our legacy customers that might have joined today. At Infolock, we provide enterprise type services, including backup, recovery, replication, restore services, storage as a service, cloud infrastructure services, and cloud to cloud services. And as you'll see on the next slide, basically Infolock is based actually in 4 data centers. Was my fault not to add one there, but we're based in Ohio in 3 data centers, along with another data center in Virginia, all tied together on a 10 gig backbone. We presently employ over 30 years experience, in cloud-based management services. We provide turnkey solutions using Zadara and Veeam, along with our telecom partners like Everstream Networks, to bring a whole turnkey solution together for you. And all of our models and platforms are based on a services-based platform using the OpEx model with 0 onboarding and 0 fees. We employ best practices in all of our data backups, along with, state-of-the-art technology as far as hardware and software, while employing the Veeam 32110 protection practice. On the next slide, you'll find Infolock partners with Zadara and Veeam, so we could provide you the only complete multi-tier, multi-location, and multi-tenant 100% OpEx solution for Veeam backup. We do this as a turnkey solution with all of our other service providers, so we can bring that to you. Infolock, we partner along with Zadara and Veeam. We partner with Everstream Networks, Azure, AWS, all the other players, and we'd be happy to speak with anybody to provide data discovery, to provide you a bulletproof backup at no cost to you.
So thanks, Bill, for that. I appreciate the overhead there of Infolock. Having 4 data centers means that we have a pretty good target to go to for disaster recovery, for business continuity, and also for this particular session of bulletproof backup. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring up Stephen from Veeam to get started here.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks, Bill. So for those who aren't familiar with Veeam, Veeam's been around since 2006. In 2008, actually, we released our first version of Veeam backup and recovery, replication, sorry. When we came out with that first version, we were at that time focused primarily on the virtual infrastructures, right? Doing VM level backups. First we did this on VMware, and then it moved to Hyper-V. Now, if we advance to build up this slide, we'll see that since then we've expanded into certain things like physical infrastructure, the ability to back up physical machines, backup as a software as a service components. For example, Office 365. We can back up to, from, and within cloud-based environments. providing disaster recovery orchestration, and a lot more. These are all reasons why Veeam has quickly grown to become one of the industry leaders in data center backup and recovery. Actually, last year we exceeded over $1 billion in our annual bookings, and that definitely was a huge accomplishment for software companies in itself. Today we have over 375,000 customers worldwide. We're completely channel based, so we have over 66,000 channel partners, and we're global. We have offices 30 plus countries.
Cool. Go ahead and fill that slide in, Ariana. Just go ahead and click once, twice. There, stop right there, and that'll let everybody kind of take a look at what Stephen was just speaking to. So that's perfect. And look at Veeam sitting high and mighty there over everybody else. You probably almost as much of the market share as everybody else out there. So perfect. So go ahead, let's go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit about our install base and customers. Anybody that brings up a slide like this, or has stories, as you imagine. And with me being here for 9 years, some of the stories I love to tell is Verizon. You're going to see in a slide that Howard and I are going to present down the road a little bit. And what we're going to do is we're going to present what we call multi-tenant architecture, but a single tenant experience. And that was one of the real key differentiators for Verizon choosing us, knowing where their disks were, knowing where their controllers were, knowing where everything was in a kind of a public or a private type of cloud. CenturyLink has brought us into a lot of customers, Ancestry's being one. We've got customers to Kellen for NASA and USDA and so forth like that. And then Infolock, probably too many to name at this point on this slide as well. So on the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Howard, and Howard's going to talk a little bit about the value of data and growing.
Yeah, good morning and afternoon, everyone. Howard Young here, and just want to give you an idea of where the data is and why it's important today. If you look at their data importance, 75% of everyone thinks their data is more important to their organization, and it keeps growing. And in some of the smaller segments, if you're static data, you're not producing a lot of data, it's not as important. But as we're going into more of a digital age, we're going into scanners, we're trying to get rid of paper altogether, email. We have to actually organize and keep that data. And this is where our Veeam backup, the 32110, is very important. You may fit into anywhere from the less important to the significant importance of your data. And we tend to have more of the 75% where everyone is growing and the data is very invaluable to their infrastructure. And on the next slide, where we go into why it's important, and this is sort of gives you a clue of if you get attacked by ransomware, the data, if you don't have access to it, on the average, you're talking about $9,000 a minute of downtime if you have lost access to your data. Now, what ransomware does, it encrypts your data, and you don't have access to it. That's just a small fee that they'll impose on you to get the data back. They'll give you the encryption keys, and what the real loss of your data is just the access. So your ransomware fee or payment, you have maybe just a small fraction of what's available or actually cost you. What will happen is your loss of your data and downtime really is a significant part of that. Couple ideas, like here's ransomware Norsk Hydro. They lost $61 million in downtime. That's just an estimate, but you can see that you lose a lot of access to your data. And if you don't have the process and your backup in place, you can't recover as fast as you normally would with a backup, bulletproof backup solution.
Interesting. And, it's funny, I was out at Winnebago several years ago, and I remember the CEO of Winnebago said, can anybody here tell me when we stopped being able to build a motor coach without a computer? And of course, everybody kind of laughed a little bit. He goes, I'm serious. He said, when was it that this blue collar business needed to have a computer? So if they had an outage, they basically ceased to build these things. And so many companies, almost every company you can touch, has this exact same situation. Next slide.
And one of the solutions we're going to cover today is a bulletproof backup with Veeam Zadara and Infolock. And this is where we can actually build your own environment. So you can back up within your environment, and you can provide this as a service or as part of your own organization, or you can have Infolock provide that service for you. What we do is we provide a true multi-tier, multi-location capability, and that's part of the 32110. So you're going to have multiple copies, you're going to have multiple locations, one's offsite, of course, and that gives you the capability to span and give you a capability where even your data is offsite. If your site goes down, you still have access to the data. And we also have another capability, which is immutability, and I'll cover that shortly. But what's more important is that we cover part of the solution. We provide all sources or methods to protect your data. So Microsoft 365 is very common. Most companies are using that as a platform for just the office works, and then you have NAS data, and also you have SAN data that you need to protect. And again, the way we protect the data is that it basically eliminates that ransomware issue that you may run into in the future, and that's what we want to protect your data. Now, on the next slide, if you look at how important your backup is, if you look at some of the capabilities are actually what happened in companies. 60% of companies have experienced a data breach. So a data breach is either through social or security fixes that have not been applied, so they'll break in. So you'll always hear in the news that your password's been stolen. Now you got to change your passwords, and these are just social engineerings, poor practices that are not really implemented in companies to provide that the actual patches and things like that. The other thing is you'll find is that 95% of the companies that suffer a loss do not survive. So if you happen to go down, it costs you, millions of dollars. You may go bankrupt. That's something you want to avoid. So backup as a process to protect your data is really important. The other thing that in the trends with storage is that backup tapes fail. So I have some backup tapes that are 20 years old. I cannot read them anymore. So all my data has been moved onto other forms. So I go into object storage that's accessible right away. So this is where you want to have a way to have your data available 100% of the time. On the next slide, we have backup and recovery is a fast and growing market. So 4 years ago it was $4 billion industry. It is growing to well exceeding 20 billion in the next couple of years. So this is sort of illustrates that the data is being protected and is becoming more and more important. And we're producing a lot more data, so you'll see growth both ways. So the value of the data is increasing, and also the amount of data. We have for the amount, we have a scaled out solution with Veeam and Infolock, so we can actually put in a solution that fits your needs today. But in 2023, we can grow that OpEx model, as we mentioned, into to match your needs for the amount of storage and backup requirements you have.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Howard. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and get a little bit deeper into the technology. Stephen's going to take us into that zip code and talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to go ahead and get into management platforms and the different styles of tiering and storage as well. So I think this should probably be what a lot of folks came for. So without further ado, Stephen.
Thanks, Doug. So, yep, the data protection zip code, the 32110. It's a lot easier to call it the zip code. So what this is back several years ago, there was actually a photographer, I think it was Peter Crow, came up with this in that time it was a 3-2-1 rule, and it was a way to protect his photography, right? So, having 3 copies of the data, 2 of it on different media, one of which is offsite. That also can be used and is used by Veeam certainly as a base for our data protection strategies. We've gone through and we've added an extra 1 and a 0 at the end. The additional 1 is what we did for the immutability, right? So in version 10 of Veeam Backup Replication, we introduced our immutability feature, of which Zadara was one of the first partners to support it. So what this does is it allows one of those copies to be unalterable, right? So in case there was a ransomware attack or some sort of corruption on one of the other 2 copies, you have this one copy that is absolutely safe and wasn't touched.
Hey, Stephen, if we have a customer that has maybe not a huge budget, can they start with 3-2-1 and then build the 1-0 out later on?
Absolutely, absolutely. Like I said, these are definitely just guidelines, easily visualize how to protect the data. But absolutely, with that, that first 3-2-1, data which is offsite, it's not saying that those 2 ones couldn't be merged, right? So you could have a data offsite that is still immutable. It's just an easy way of, think of it in the days when you had a backup, you could stick it on a truck and send it off to some Iron Mountain somewhere. Technology's evolved to the point where we have immutability.
Perfect.
And as I was saying, that's a good question. And as I was saying, that last 0, unfortunately, it's at the end of the number, but it's probably the most important number in the whole zip code. So what value do your backups have, regardless of how many copies or how safe they are, how immutable they are, if you can't restore from them? So this is the reason, Veeam has a feature, we call it Sure Backup. And Sure Backup is the ability to, manually or automatically verify the recoverability of your backups. So once you do your backup, you can actually go out now and verify that backup's recoverable, right? No more of the days you have to wait till you do a DR test and realize that something's not working. On our next slide, we'll talk about the Veeam Cloud Data Management Platform. So the cloud data management itself, it means that Veeam's customers, were able to achieve unparalleled data availability, mobility, visibility, automation, governance, all that good stuff, all across the data, the entire data footprint of their organization, whether it be at the edge or even in the cloud. Now, the reason for this is customers today, they want more from their platforms than just making a copy of it and protecting it. They want to have cloud data management capabilities. They want things that can surpass their legacy applications to go through and protect the data and providing the next steps going forward. Some of those are, you look at the model itself, right? You start off with the backup and recovery, right? I mean, that's what it's called, Veeam Backup and Replication. That's what it does, recovery. It's very simple to use, very reliable. It's software-based. We have application awareness. We have the ability, as I mentioned earlier, to ensure granular and verified backup and recovery of all of your critical assets. What this level does in the diagram is this level in the platform, I should say, this ensures that your customers are always able to recover from system failures, whether they be outages, cyber attacks, or other IT crises. The VVR, our backup recovery, also provides cloud mobility, which is huge nowadays, right? This is the ability to, protect, restore, and more importantly, migrate workloads across any cloud or platform. So, the ability to take your data, move it and manage it, however you like to go. The next part of the pie there is our orchestration. This is our, automation. This is our ability within Veeam to leverage your, backup data to, unlock other things within your data, whether it be like e-discovery, data classification, searching for ransomware, virusware. You can test and orchestrate these, your backup continuity and disaster recovery operations within our virtual labs. On the slide, we call it data labs. This can ensure that we can recover from any event, as mentioned earlier, right? We also have the ability to monitor and provide analytics. So This allows you to go through and monitor, diagnose, and even proactively remediate some unexpected issues in your backups, right? So you can get reports within Veeam that tell you whether certain parts of your infrastructure are available, for backups, whether you have enough tapes, enough storage to do the backups. You can drive your disaster recovery processes using our built-in AI and for some further diagnostics we have. And all of this allows you to provide, as I mentioned earlier, the e-discovery, the GDPR, this allows you to do that governance and compliance within your environment. So within that whole cloud data management, now we have the ability to ensure that the application security is there, compliance is met, privacy requirements are met. All this can be done before you've actually deployed the data using these data labs. And it has absolutely no impact whatsoever on your production systems, and nor is there any increased cost to the customers. Now, on the next slide, I'll talk about our scale-out backup repository. So the scale-out backup repository, or commonly known as SOBR. So what this is within our VBR infrastructure, right? We have certain components. One of them is a repository, and SOBR is a special type of repository, right? A repository is where you send your backups to. So what SOBR does is it basically has two main tiers, two main components. One of them is the performance tier, and by its name, it's high performance disk. It's the initial target where you want to do your backups to. And Zadara is absolutely a tremendous target for this performance tier. Next, we have the capacity tier, right? So the capacity tier, this is an optional tier. It's object storage. Again, Zadara is a great target for this. And what the capacity tier is, it's used as an extension or a copy of the performance tier itself. And on the next slide, I'll go through and dive into some greater details of the performance tier. So, as I mentioned earlier, the performance tier is definitely the fast disk. This is where you want to do, if you need to do a restore and you need to do it fast, this is where you want to get the data from. There are some other features within Veeam that definitely work better if you have a faster target. For example, the instant VM recovery. It's our ability to spin up a virtual machine off of the backup and actually run it in the environment while you're recovering your virtual machine. So, again, having it on fast disk like Zadara is critical. The performance tier is also can be comprised. It's certainly one repository, but it can be many repositories, which we call extents. And these extents, they can be direct attached storage, they can be network attached storage, they can be dedupe appliances. And what it is it's one logical container. So you're backing up to the performance tier, where in actuality, the performance tier can be many different types of repositories. Now, again, the Zadara is a great target. The VPSA, for example, has gone through and just been tested and verified, and it meets our performance requirements for what we call, Veeam ready. In some of the earlier slides, Doug had, there were some logos, and one of them was the Veeam ready repository. And what this is, it just means that the VPSA has been tested, and we have certain benchmarks and performance requirements that it needs to meet in order to get that logo. And it means that it meets the requirements that we set for what we expect the performance of our performance tier to provide. Next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the capacity tier. So, as I mentioned earlier, the capacity tier is optional. It's part of the SOBR, and what it is it's an S3 compatible object storage target. It uses, we use native S3 APIs to manage it and to control it, and that's where our partners like Zadara, who have implemented the native S3 APIs, makes a perfect fit with Veeam. Typically, the capacity tier, again by its name, it's scalable. It's going to allow you to, like I said, if you use that move mode, it's going to allow you to take older data out of your performance tier and move it to the object storage. And what this does is, let's say your performance tier, you had 180 days worth of backups on it, 6 months, right? And now you can say, well, I only want to keep 30 days. I'm going to keep the other 150 days off in the capacity tier. What that does is going to free up a whole chunk of your performance tier. So this way, you can, I don't want to say replace, but you can basically take the data off of the high cost performance tier and move it to a lower cost, and that would free up again some of that space in your performance tier. Veeam doesn't charge you to use this object storage. Some of our competitors do. It's sort of a cloud tax. If you want to move it to a cloud or object storage, there's an extra fee. We don't have any of that. As I mentioned, that move mode was introduced in 9.5.4, which was early 2019. In version 10, which came out this year in February, we introduced what we call the copy mode. So again, as the name implies, it's going to copy the data from the performance tier to the capacity tier. And this happens as soon as that backup file is created on the performance tier. We will then immediately copy it off to the object storage. And both of those can be be used in conjunction. So it's not necessarily an either or, it can be both. Now, the copy mode, what this does is it, again, allows that capacity tier to be used as a DR copy of the performance tier. More importantly, what this does, this satisfies that first one in the 3-2-1 rule, being that one copy is being offsite, if you would, right? So, or even, it could be part of the two, even as part of the second media, right? Because we consider that also different disk formats. So if you had something, file and block, and you had another copy and object, that as well can satisfy, some of the 3-2-1 rule stuff. In the next slide, I'll go into a little bit deeper into the capacity tier. And what this is again, I mentioned that version 10, which came out earlier this year, we introduced our immutability feature. So, this is utilizing, again, the native S3 object locking APIs. We use what's called the compliance mode. There's two modes, compliance and governance. The compliance is by far and away the strictest as far as, like I said, if you write something to object storage and use the compliance mode, it cannot be altered by no means. And again, this is going to satisfy that second one in the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, which states that one copy must be immutable or offline. Now, Zadara again is a great platform to be used for this capacity tier, right? They offer both an on-site and off-site solution, and that does provide you the flexibility in designing, the solution for your Veeam data protection, as well as the Veeam Ready repository. Zadara has also passed the testing for both what we have the Veeam Ready object and the Veeam Ready object with immutability tests. So they've passed, all the tests required for Veeam Ready object with immutability, as well as the Veeam Ready repository. So all of our repository-based, disk-based repository stuff, Zadara has passed with flying colors. On the next slide, I'll go into a little bit one of our offerings that we call called Cloud Connect. So we build this out. There's 4 green bullets, and what this is Veeam Cloud Connect will it provides to our customers a fully integrated, it's fast, secure way to back up and replicate data to a service provider like Infolock's cloud-based repository. So Infolock is one of Veeam's VCSPs, right? Which we call it's a Veeam Cloud Service Provider, and Infolock can be used with Cloud Connect to store your backups on their resources. By using Cloud Connect, there's no need for a dedicated pipe to Infolock, right? There's no VPN, additional VPN, no VPN licensing whatsoever required. Basically, you just use the ID and password Infolock provides you. You enter into Veeam's GUI and off you go. Veeam has some built-in WAN accelerator capabilities that can certainly be deployed on both sides, on site and as well as on the Infolock side to speed up the data transfer between the sites. A great thing, is Infolock does use Zadara, as file, block, and object storage on their side. Again, what this does, it gives you all the feature functionality and Veeam Ready testing results and stuff that we discussed earlier. So by using Infolock with Zadara, you don't lose any of the feature functionality that I discussed. And on the next slide is a graphical virtualization, I guess, a visualization of what this a Cloud Connect backup scenario would look like, right? So On the far left, you have your production environment. This would be your on-site environment where you have your production data, probably running on a Zadara. You would have your, in this case, VMware environment, maybe some physical servers out there. And what you would do is you would use the Veeam Cloud Connect to then connect to the Infolock cloud. And in this way, your production data will be backed up and stored on a server within Infolock's infrastructure. So you would have your performance tier and you would have your capacity tier. And again, all of that stuff that we talked about earlier, right? The ability to do the restores, instant VM recovery, immutability, all the 32110 stuff. All of that is satisfied by using a Veeam Zadara and Infolock solution. And on the next slide, that's some Zadara stuff.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Stephen. And you've answered all these questions. So we're going to go ahead and get into these 4 examples here really quick. But when you're looking at a storage partner like Infolock, and also a partner like Veeam, and a partner like Zadara, let's add that to it. Are we kind of creating this trifecta between the 3 technologies or the 3 concepts that we're talking about? Infolock has the data centers. Bill talked about 4 of them. Has the landing zones for all this. Zadara, we have the ability to we've validated our immutability. We have our multi-tenant storage, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. Multi-tier with an air gap, being able to have both file or block, and then also object storage, being able to do that through a common set of tools, technologies, and techniques. One common set of skills to be able to manage all of this for you. Can I change my technology as my needs change? Absolutely. This is an as-a-service OpEx business, so you can change out your performance tier. Can go from SSD to SATA with cache, whatever you wish. You can basically grab the steering wheel for that. Can I deliver the same experience in multiple locations? We talked about we can do it on-prem, we can do it in Infolock, we can do it at your data center, and you can also scale back. So if you find that you've overcommitted, you're saying I need 500 terabytes, but you're finding that I only needed closer to 250 or 300 terabytes, I can go ahead and scale that back. So these are the things, these are the three companies that you're talking to right now are really the 3 companies that can really solve this problem to eliminate those $65 million outages, heaven forbid if something like that happened. So in the next slide, we're going to talk about where Zadara lives, and we live basically inside co-location facilities. We live inside on premises. So Infolock has customers that have actually purchased the solution from them, or they also have their MSP stood up over on the right-hand side. So once again, our Zadara cloud can basically be installed wherever the point of need is, whether it be edge or core or data centers or wherever you want it to be, we can go ahead and be there. Now, what is a VPSA? We keep talking about VPSA. So the next slide, we're going to just spend a few minutes on that. Virtual private storage array. This is where our patents are. This is where Zadara has really become very strong over the last 9 years. And if we look at this, these 6 horizontal boxes just above the disks, those are storage nodes. And then down below, of course, are the disks, and up above are some cores, some Intel cores inside the storage nodes. So for you technically minded folks, what we do is we basically, through a very easy, very self-taught e-commerce graphical interface, you click on the amount of drives that you wish. You click on the amount of the size of the engine or the amount of cores that you wish. And now you create your own virtual SAN, if you will, or virtual private array. In a multi-tenant world, we're going to give you a single tenant experience. You know that you own the disks, you own the cores, you own the memory, you own everything with this particular environment. There's no possibility. Now, we don't worry about security in multi-tenant environments in public clouds today. I mean, that's pretty much solved. What we do worry about is multi-tenancy from a noisy neighbor perspective. And we want your production tier to have the high production so your backups finish on time. We don't want them to be your production tier bouncing into perhaps other customers or other tenants out there. So you can see on this slide, the first VPSA owns those 4 drives. They're not virtual drives, they're physical. The next tier down, there's 10 drives. That customer owns those 10 drives, and that could be, maybe the top one is SSD and maybe running a SQL database or whatever, or backup performance tier. The next one might be file. It might be on SATA drives with cache. And then the bottom one is the object tier. That's the immutable storage. Now, this can live in an offsite environment, sorted together, but that might be a little silly. And to put all your backup in one architecture, you'd probably have it on maybe 2 different pieces of architecture here in the event of something going on. So this is really virtual private storage array, private virtual environment in a multi-tenant architecture. So after that, Howard's going to get up and talk about 4 different use cases on the next few slides. So Howard, back over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Doug. One of the ways we can deploy those VPSAs and object storage is in the cloud or on-premise. So for example, if you want to just implement a 3-2-1 type of architecture, just to get started, you could run Veeam and basically back it up to a storage array that could be a file or block, and then object storage. So that's an all self-contained type of architecture. Now to extend that off to the offsite, so you get a 3-2-1-1. Now what you could do is add object storage in Infoblock, and so this would be a Cloud Connect type of operation, and then you can store your data in offsite, off premises. So that gives you the full 3-2-1-1. And then of course, to do the zip code, you verify the whole system, and you have a sure backup process from start to finish. Now on the next slide, what we do is we look at a immutability capability within our object storage. So if you look at the bottom lock down here, what we do is we actually make that object storage immutable. So that gives you an air gap between the data and the rest of the system, so that even if they find a way into your archives and delete them, you still have a locked copy on object storage. So this gives you the completely isolated way to recover, and you use a copy or move from your sober into the object storage, and you have a copy that is actually locked from being deleted. Now you can set the policy on that from days to years. So if you have a 7-year archive or policy for backup that you need to have it protected, you can set it for that. Now you can create a container and set different policies. So if you want to do that type of policy long-term and short-term, you can actually set this up really easily within the Infolock data center using the Cloud Connect. Another use case is backup for 365. So Microsoft 365, there are integrations with Veeam. They'll do a backup of 365. They also do a backup into, from Exchange. So if you're running Exchange on-premise and SharePoint on-premise, you can actually do a backup. The same policy or the zip code applies here for 365, but it's all integrated. So you don't have to worry about finding a specific backup program or a process that runs 365 and one for your NAS or your other files. It's all a complete package that will provide a complete solution for 365 and the rest of your system. The same policy works for your on-premise or on your Cloud Connect. So you keep your model for a on-premise for a 3-2-1, and if you need to extend that out for the complete zip code, you go off into Infolock, and that gives you that immutable offsite capability. Another thing we do is we provide a non-egress type of capability. So when you think about object storage, it's actually most of the fees are, it costs money to pull data out. Here with Zadara, we don't charge that. Now with the NAS access, it's the same policy, same type of setup. You just add sober, makes it very simple, and then you set up your backup jobs, and it basically will back up your NAS or NFS or SMB sources to the sober repository, and you set the policy based on copy and move, and if you how much you need for a performance or for a cloud tier or capacity tier for your backup.
Thanks, Howard. Thanks, Howard, so much. So on the next slide, it's always fun to talk about a customer use case, and this is a great example of Veeam and Zadara and our partners coming together. Viatel is one of the largest telecommunications companies in Europe. And what they did was they were concerned with ransomware, of course, and they were concerned with how to basically build out this architecture. So their challenge was identify ways to participate in new high growth markets, of course, retain their existing customers, and grow overall revenues and margins. Now, none of that sounds like ransomware, does it? But what it does sound like is keeping my business running and keeping my customers very, very happy. I wanted to quickly deploy, eliminate the need to build out new technology. I wanted to basically use some OpEx business or OpEx technology rather than having to go out and buy all kinds of things. So if you look at Damian McCain's quote here, using Zadara, we were able to quickly deploy these world-class applications and so forth. So let's see how we did. Let's go ahead on the next slide and let's see how we did today. And I have some questions that have come in. So I'm going to go ahead and answer some of those questions here in just a moment. But let's see, single simplified backup and recovery solution for both on-prem and cloud. I think we kind of covered that one. And I love summary slides because it basically reminds you of what we just talked about. All tiers from performance, primary, all flash, scale out, all those types of pieces. Now, not only, we're talking about bulletproof backup today, but Infolock, they also do just regular storage solutions, DR solutions, backup solutions, of course, anything that we need to. The ability to change technology based on business needs changing. That's so important. You don't know what the crystal ball is going to be like in the next 3, 4, 5 years. When you purchase something today, you go, wow, I hope I get it right. I hope the next 3 years plays out the way I said. But in this case, if you wanted to change the drives or you wanted to change the infrastructure, you don't own it. It's all OpEx, and you could basically change that out. OpEx storage that matches the Veeam subscription leasing model, so we line up perfectly with that. Working with the sober technology and having the various tiers, end-to-end cloud solutions, and then 24/7, 365 managed services. Zadara kind of backups Infolock, but Infolock basically will provide you a tremendous peace of mind there. So the next slide, let's talk about how we can get started. And you can take a look at this, and you can go ahead and go to infolock.io. You can go to zadara.com/Veeam. You can register for a free trial. You'll be able to experience some of this at the VPSA level, at the other levels as well. So I expect everybody out there is sort of scratching their heads on backup and ransomware and all this stuff that's kind of bubbling around them. So that's certainly something we want to talk about. I'm going to go ahead and take the first question here. It said basically, Doug, you talked about the storage nodes in your architecture. If I was to put this in my data center, how many storage nodes do I need to start with? And that's a great question. Get that all the time. You need to start with a minimum of 2 storage nodes. If you remember my architecture with the horizontal storage nodes, you need to have 2. That gives us what we call our RAIN technology, redundant array of independent nodes. And that means I can lose an entire node and continue to operate with the other node. This basically takes RAID technology, RAIN technology, front-end and backup networking technology, all those things. So if you're looking at putting something like this on premise or on site, then basically Bill and his team, you'd go to infolock.io and they'd be able to take care of that. Now the other question I have is for Steve, and he said, heaven forbid, Steve, if I do find that I was attacked by ransomware, but I'm really fortunate that I've put Veeam into play here. What is a simple flow that I would use to sort of eradicate this ransomware attack, knowing that I basically have partnered with you folks?
Great question. We hear it all the time. So the first thing is you would want to contact Veeam support. We have some specially trained folks there in our support staff who focus on any calls we get regarding ransomware. But as far as the process, it's actually very simple. Again, you have that sober, and again you have your performance tier and you have your capacity tier. So if that performance tier was suspect and corrupt somehow, very easily what you can do is you can go into the performance tier, go into Veeam's interface, mark that performance tier as being in maintenance mode, and that'll basically take it offline. Now you just go into a restore as you would normally through Veeam, and Veeam has the built-in intelligence that, well, if it can't get it from the performance tier, we're going to automatically go out and get it from the capacity tier. Veeam also has this capability, we call it Secure Restore. And what this does, it adds another level of protection that when you're doing this restoration out of the capacity tier, what it'll do is actually, with the Secure Restore, will actually pre-stage it in a virtual lab, that data labs that we showed in one of the slides. Once that data is in this staging area, now you can run some malware or virus detecting software this way to validate that what you're restoring is actually not infected, right? Because the whole thing with ransomware is the ransomware software can be on your system for a period of time before it's activated. So this is a great way to validate that what you're restoring isn't as infected as what you had in production.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. I hope everybody understood that. Thank you so much for that question, because there's no use in, and this is where data labs and basically having the ability to make sure that your backup set is in good shape, and that's a great tool that you get through Veeam. Bill, this one's for you. Can you please further explain your backup as a service? I have on-prem, I have some public cloud, and I'm looking at maybe doing a little bit of co-location. Can I back up all that into one central location? Would you have a repository? You talked about 4 data centers. Do you have a repository that I could basically target all of those into one common location?
Sure, Doug. Thanks. Yeah, the great thing about dealing with an MSP like Infolock, we've already made the investment to be able to back up and restore from anywhere to anywhere. So today we could back up, whether it be cloud, on-prem, robo, it doesn't matter, that we actually have the platform in place, along with Zadara to back up and restore, anywhere. And, along with our partnership with Zadara, we can provide, immutable object storage, so we can scale to any size backup that, you require, and have the security that you need. So absolutely, we can do it from anywhere to anywhere.
So let's think about that. We know the storage because it's common. It's Zadara storage, and it's the same interface for both NAS and block and object. We know Veeam, it's going to be one standard interface, so that's common. And then we know Infolock, and that's going to be one team to work through and one set of support folks. So it sounds like if we're trying to boil this down into a bare lowest common denominator, we really want to have this collection of 3 companies to be able to do that. I have one more kind of a follow-on question to that a little bit, but this is for Howard. Is Howard, we talked about different on-prem and public cloud and things like that. Do I have to be aware of any nuances between backing up my Office 365 or perhaps my NAS, or is it all going to be pretty much the same setup?
It's going to be pretty much the same setup. You just decide what policies you want. If you want to do a 321 or a 32110, it's really straightforward. It doesn't matter if it's in the cloud or on-premise, or if it's Office 365. It's the same process.
And like I said earlier, maybe 321 is a reasonable fit for some use cases, although Steve may disagree with me, but maybe if we're starting out, maybe 321 is okay. And then maybe 3211 might be okay for some other applications. And I know we can sort of configure it however you wish within those types of pieces. Like you said, 32110 is kind of a theoretical or a virtual number that kind of keeps us honest as to where our data is. I used to always say, if you really love that picture of your grandmother and it's online, it's on your computer, then you ought to make a backup of it, because someday you may lose the picture of your grandmother. And heaven forbid for that. So this is really what it's all about, is where do you need to have your data to make sure that you can basically restore your business. So that, I got to the end of our questions. Thank you for those questions. Those were great. And so it really lets us know that you were paying attention. So we've got about 7 minutes before. I think I'm maybe going to be able to give you back a little bit of your day. I was noticing that all you folks really did hang with us for almost for this whole hour. So I hope this was of value. I hope that you'll reach out to us. You have the invite. There's lots of ways. We're going to be sending out an email to everybody with the recording and so forth. So with that, I'm gonna turn the day back over to you folks. Stay safe, stay healthy, and talking to kind of a world community here. I'm really happy that you spent some time with us this afternoon. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bid you adieu and have a great rest of the day. Thank you so much for the whole team. Bye now.